Hi, I'm Kalki Kekla and I'm really excited because we have a new season of my BBC World Service podcast, My Indian Life. First of all, I want to say thank you so much to all of you for sending in your stories over the last few months. Some of those have been really personal experiences and we really appreciate it. For this season, I have met some really amazing people. People like Badisha, a drag king who's unapologetic about who she is, or Emma Javed, a rapper from Kashmir who has really truly given me a new perspective on Kashmir. There are many, many more to come. One day in Bangalore, 19 years ago, Lakshmi met Nisha for the first time. Lakshmi worked at an orphanage, and Nisha, a tiny baby girl, had been left there by her birth parents.
They didn't feel they were able to give her the care that she would need.
Because Nisha didn't look like the other babies in the orphanage. She had no eyelids. Her skin was very dry. She had been born with a very rare genetic disorder.
The condition called ichthyosis. And that needs a lot of care, a lot of attention, and specialized looking after. So we also felt that we would not be able to give her that kind of care because we had so many other babies and children, and our staff were not highly trained.
Back then, and maybe still, there was a kind of fear. How do we look after a child like this? What should we do?
Nobody in India will really take a child with special needs.
I'm Kalki Kekla, and I'm back for another season of My Indian Life, the BBC World Service podcast that brings you real-life stories from young people in India. Episode 1, Rescued. Baby Nisha stayed in the adoption center with all the other babies under the care of Lakshmi. When people came to the orphanage looking for a child to adopt, they never chose Nisha. But then Aloma came into Nisha's life. She was a doctor who would visit the orphanage, and her reaction to Nisha was very different to most other people's. She didn't see a badly disfigured child. She saw a child in desperate need of love.
That very first moment when I set my eyes on Nisha, when we set our eyes on Nisha, was shock. To see a child who was so badly disfigured. She was so tiny, so vulnerable. Abandoned, given away, rejected. And that was a time when she needed a family the most. When she needed someone to hold her, to hug her, to tell her it's okay, we'll be there for you. We saw this little girl who was in really a bad state. She had no eyelids, her eyes were bleeding, her skin was in a terrible way. And I remember so clearly, our second daughter just picked her up, hugged her, and said, "Mom, let's take her home."
And that's exactly what they did.
The first few days were difficult, primarily because even though I'm a doctor, I had never looked after a child like this before. Her body had no temperature control, so we had to wrap her up. And then when we wrapped her up, the fabric would get stuck to her skin. So then along the line, we learned that we had to put liquid paraffin on her skin. And her mouth was wide open. She couldn't drink or suck on a bottle. So we used to feed her with an ink filler. So the first 3 months were difficult. And I remember the doctors at that time telling me, "Why would you want to adopt a child like this?" And I sort of stood up to my full height of 5 feet, never mind how much. And I said, "You tell me why I shouldn't adopt a child like this." And I got really mad with the doctor. His duty was to tell me how to manage the case, how to take care of her. His duty was not to tell me not to take the child. That was my decision and my husband's decision. When you make a decision to bring a baby home, it's a decision you make with your head. The heart kicks in a little later. And I think when you first see a child, especially a child with special needs, you first see a special need. And somewhere along the line, when your relationship develops and you begin to see the child as a child, and somehow the special need goes into the background. What you really see is a child, and I think you will agree with me there.
Absolutely. You see the special need at the start, and later on you see the person.
This is Aloma's husband, David.
Which was very impressive, the little child we had adopted.
To cut a long story short, Nisha is a fighter. Apparently, such severe cases of ichthyosis may not survive in a country like ours. But she's a fighter and she decided to survive.
Nisha is Eloma and David's sixth child, and she's turning 20 in a few weeks. They had 3 sons and later 2 daughters who were also adopted. Nisha's skin since birth is very tight around her mouth, which means she can't open or close it like other people, and that affects her speech. But she says, despite her condition, her childhood in this big, warm, new family was kind of ordinary.
When I was younger, my second oldest brother was the one who used to fight with, I guess. He used to wrap me up in a carpet and then stand the carpet in a corner so I couldn't move, like with my hands in the... So I used to be stuck like that unless I wanted to fall. My favorite time in general would be Christmas. Everyone comes over for Christmas or just everyone gets together for it. So I like that.
Yeah.
We go for midnight mass like every year. That's midnight mass and then wake up. I get up late in the morning on the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And then start Christmas lunch, which is generally rice, roast, and Christmas cake. Sweets, like marzipan and all that kind of sweets. And roast cookies.
Sounds delicious.
And then once everyone arrives, it's lunch, then spend the rest of the day just, like, generally everyone eats a lot on Christmas Day.
It's really clear that Nisha loves her parents, and they love her.
And my mom is the one who, like, I come home from college or school or whatever, I talk to her, like, what happened with that day, what happened every. So she's the one I would talk to about whatever's happening in my life in that day. My dad is the one I go to, like, if I wanted to discuss anything that's going on, I want advice or whatever. Dad will be the one I go to.
One always has an anxiety and a fear that something might go wrong. She cannot see the traffic too well. Her sight is very poor. She says she's careful, but there's always that doubt. Will she be careful enough? So yes, when she goes out, there's always a tinge of anxiety.
When I went to school, I think it was a mixture of reactions because then I met new people who didn't know anything about it. So they used to say, or not sit with me. When I was a kid, I couldn't do any sports. Like, I didn't like...
Did you miss that as a kid?
No, I mean, I couldn't do it. Didn't mean I didn't end up doing it.
You still ended up doing
Yeah.
it? Right.
So I couldn't be in the sun for too long, but at the same time, my friends were crazy about sports.
Yeah.
So I did end up running and whatnot, and I basically built up an endurance. So I basically built up a tolerance for it.
But is it painful at times?
Kind of like when it cracks, then yes, it's painful. But at the same time, I've lived with it like my whole life. It's like you get used to something afterwards.
Did you ever feel like you can't do some of the things the other kids do?
No. You have to try something. You never know unless you try it. So, no, I never felt I can't do anything.
Nisha's positivity is kind of humbling when you discover that she has had to contend with unthinking cruelty throughout her life.
Nisha, do you remember that lady who came out of church once and said something to me? Do you remember her?
Yes.
She sort of looked at you and she touched your face. You know, she said, I don't know you, but your ancestors must have done something terribly wrong for your child to be like this.
Actually, I do remember this.
You do remember that? Because my first response was to kick her in the shin. But then you looked at me with such an innocent face, and I said to her, thank you so much, and I walked on. But there is a stigma. Do you realize that? There is this old belief that anybody who's born with a genetic condition is the result of sin or a result of something that happened in your life in the past, and that's why there's a stigma attached to it.
There was a time the family boarded a flight to go on a holiday.
This man didn't want to sit next to me. He had actually demanded that I be taken off the flight. He didn't want to sit next to me. So
Why should you be taken off the flight?
I don't know.
He didn't just want to simply shift his seat.
No, that's actually what the air hostess offered him. She told him that he could move places if he wanted. And they also offered us compensation for his behavior.
How did they want to compensate?
They offered to move us up to business class. But that's when I told my mom, no, I don't need compensation for somebody else's poor behavior.
And so you didn't move?
No, because I don't want to be compensated for anyone else's bad behavior.
Nisha says when people stare at her, her policy is just to wave at them. She prefers to respond rather than to react. All of us on the My Indian Life team, as we got to know Nisha, came to understand pretty quickly that she's just incredible and that we can learn from her.
The thing with being uncomfortable around people, it depends on how I react or not. I didn't get upset. I only get upset if I choose to be. I'd only be uncomfortable if I said, whatever you're doing is making me uncomfortable, so
At no point do you get upset?
no.
Never.
No, I don't get upset.
What about when you're having a really bad day?
My skin condition, no, doesn't make me feel down. I think happiness is a mindset, not just an emotion. My skin condition, it's like a part of me, but it's not everything. I can decide to be happy or I can decide to be sad.
Even at a very small age, when someone spat on her, and I was so upset. She was just 4 years old. And when I said to Nisha, I'm so sorry what she did. And Nisha said to me, Mama, what she did is her problem, not mine. And I think herein lies the fact that she accepts herself the way she is. She loves herself the way she is. She has made a decision to be happy.
As a mother who chose to adopt other children, Aloma has faced prejudice herself.
I remember when we adopted our first child 40 years ago, it was practically unheard of. And the process took 2 years, the legal process, because they couldn't understand why somebody who had 3 boys would want to adopt a girl. See, we in India, to us, caste, creed, color is very relevant. And when people want to adopt a baby, they used to come and tell me at that time that they did not want a child of a particular religion, a particular caste, a particular color. And if it's an older child, people are a little worried about where the child, quote unquote, comes from. Children with special needs, practically negligible, because there is a stigma attached to children with special needs in our country. Having said that, urban couples who have no children are willing to adopt a child. They sometimes have to beat parental opposition or family opposition, and they come to adopt. By and large, adoption is becoming a little more accepted.
When each of the adoptions in our family happened, it was a wonderful experience. So that's how it grew in us, and we hope it spreads to a lot more people.
Nisha is at college now and hopes to become a teacher. And she says she wants to fight prejudice in India. There's a lot of work to do. Nisha told me she doesn't want sympathy, but she does want acceptance.
I think people could be more accepting in general. Instead of reacting with fear or negativity of some kind, people can be more accepting of what they don't know or they see as different from them.
There was only one time when she came and said to me, when she was about 5, I think, when we were coming back from London, I remember, she looked at my husband and me and she said, why did they give me away, referring to her birth parents? Why did they give me away when I needed them most? And I don't think she even expected an answer. But we did answer her and say that the people who did that must have loved you so much, because no one can give away a child so easily. And if they did, it was because they gave you out of love to someone who could take care of you. And I think to some extent that did answer her question, because she never asked it again. Nisha, I was wondering, do you ever think about them?
No. No, I don't think about it.
It's okay to ask. If you ever think about them, it's okay to ask me. Doesn't matter. Yeah, I don't know them either, so.
There's no curiosity to find out.
No, there isn't.
Maybe that's because Nisha has a wonderful family. Her life could so easily have turned out so very differently. But what's amazing and kind of beautiful is that this family who saved baby Nisha have been repaid by her many times over, simply because of who Nisha is.
I think she has made the biggest impression on my life of most people I've met. She is a person, I find, who doesn't react. She always is in charge of her situation. No matter what the provocation, no matter what the disturbance. She mentioned it's not her problem if somebody else behaves badly. And we react to the weather, to the traffic. We are upset when it's cold, when it's hot, when it's raining. We always find the other is better, but not her. She's happy all the time. And if you look at her pictures, she's always smiling. And that smile is like a lifetime of laughter in her smile. I find her a very wonderful teacher. I've learned a lot from her.
Here is a young woman who was born different, but who refuses to hide and has made a decision to live life to the fullest. Therein lies my message to everybody else. Even though you may be different, you may look different, it doesn't mean that you are different. And you are in no way unequal. I think the greatest thing is to be able to celebrate our differences.
As humans, we have a habit of complaining about little things that go wrong in life. And you seem very content. Where does that come from?
Being content is totally my environment. Like, I grew up with love and everything that I would want or need. And I guess the skin condition, I've never thought of it as something I don't want this, or that I need to complain about it. I don't actually think I've had any complaints or anything that I want to say, why is this happening, or why me, or anything like that. I don't think I have any reason to think like that.
Meeting Nisha has been really inspirational for me personally. In a world where we are looking at the exterior of people and the way they are different, here is someone who is looking inside herself and realizing who she is and chooses to be happy. From me, Kalki, and all of us, thank you for listening to My Indian Life, an original podcast from the BBC World Service. There's lots more to come. Stay with us for the rest of season 2. You can tell us what you think of this story or any of our others. All you have to do is send an email to myindianlife@bbc.com. If you want to support us more, there's good news. You can by subscribing, reviewing us, and telling your friends about us. Next time,
that was the spark where I felt that conscious music was the way to go, about struggles that I had heard about in Kashmir. I realized that I really need to put my music out that talks about my people and my streets and what we see every day.